Welcome to my latest episode. I've got morning conversations while you sit on the commode. So smile a big smile, kick back with coffee, enjoy conversation with the peach. She's just a little frosty. She's just a little frosty.
Well, hello, my sweet and frosty friends. I hope everyone's doing well today. Y'all, I'm excited. It's a beautiful day here in Northern Ohio on Lake Erie. And I want to welcome you guys once again to another episode of Coffee Convos and Cutting Through the Chaos. Y'all, we got a great episode coming today. I'm super excited. Today, we are going to be cutting through the chaos of holding on to what is not ours to be held. And we're letting go of the chaos of holding on too tightly. So before we get started, we're going to go ahead and we're going to say hi to Chetty back here because he's behind me. We're going to go ahead and get us a little cup of coffee to get cranked up, and we'll go ahead and get started this morning. So grab you something sweet. You know how it is around here. And we're going to go ahead and jump on in. So, the art of letting go today, y'all. Can you imagine, just for a moment, you've had a hard day. We've all had hard days at work, you know. You come home late, the kitchen light is on, you know, and your spouse or your parent or your friend is sitting at the table. You know, it's late, you're tired. And they're sitting there with a nice cup of coffee or tea. And you know that table is a warm, safe place where thousands of stories have been told, wounds have been opened and closed. And, you know, sometimes it's just one sitting. You know, you've got that comfortability with that old table, with that friend. And that's how I want to talk to you today, because that table is ready to hold something heavy that has been dragging you down for so long. So what we want to do today is we want to envision ourselves sitting at that table with that friend, with that spouse. You know, we're ready to have that open conversation. You know, it kind of reminds me of the Golden Girls. You know, y'all know I'm old. And, you know, they used to spill all their problems out at the table over cheesecake. And I love cheesecake. So that's the absolute best way to do it. Something sweet. You just pour your heart out, you know, at the table. I want to envision that. And, you know, if that's too hard for you, then let's do this. Let's envision taking that one thing that has been weighing you down and just gently laying it on the table. That thing that's been tugging at your chest. Lay it all out on the table over some sweet tea or some coffee. You know, what is it that you need to lay down on that table that is so heavy that you've been carrying for so long? Remember, you're not throwing it away. You're just lightening the load a little bit. That way you can decide if you really need it or not. You're just setting it down and lightening your load. You don't have to carry everything on your shoulders. You're not a backpack. We're not backpacks, folks. No one likes to talk about the things that we cling to that aren't good for us. That's messy. That's awkward, right? And nobody really wants to talk about these kinds of things. You know, we cling on to things because we're scared of losing something. Whether it's our identity, we're repeating our own old mistakes, we're giving up. That's a big one. That's a big one for me anyway. You know, no one wants to feel like they were a failure, that they gave up on something. You know, but sometimes we have to reframe that and say, you know, what is it that I'm going to gain if I let go of this thing? You know, oh, that's big, right? Because we're not losing anything. We're gaining something better in the process. You know, someone once told me that sometimes we hold on because the weight is part of who we are. Boy, that's a big one right there. You know, as I'm a Southern girl and I can relate to this because, you know, I grew up Gen X. Y'all know I'm Gen X. I'm always talking about being Gen X, right? And, you know, we can relate to this because that's kind of who we were. You know, we were grown up by the time we were teenagers. Some of us even younger than that, you know. We were taught at a very young age how to be self-sufficient. And so a lot of us were grown up, you know, way before it was time to grow up, and right, wrong, or in between, we were self-sufficient. And for some of us, myself included, I think it's hard a lot of times to ask for help. That's something I've been working on for myself, because we've been self-sufficient for so long. We don't trust people. We tend to say, if you want something right, you got to do it yourself, you know. And this kind of brings me to a little story of my childhood that I can barely remember for the most part. So, you know, back in the day, before the whole GPS thing and all, you go to the grocery store and no one knew who you were or knew where you were. It's not like mom and daddy's tracking you and stuff like that. So I used to ride my bicycle up to, boy, this sounds country, but up to the little, you know, mom and pop store up the street. And I believe we actually used to charge, you know, things there. So I would go there, you know, buy some candy or some snacks or some ice cream, because who didn't want a bomb pop in the summer, right? But you know, it's just such a different time now. And kind of circling back around, my mom and I went to Walmart one time. And I've heard the story. I really don't remember much about it, but I've always heard this story throughout my life. And mom left me at Walmart. And I don't know how many of y'all have had this happen to you and have experienced this as mothers or as children. But my mom panicked. You know, my mom is a great, wonderful, incredible mom, like I've said many, many times. And she left me. She had a moment, and before she even like pulled into the driveway, she panicked because she knew that I wasn't there. So she immediately turned around, go back to the store, and there I was just sitting on the floor, playing with some kind of toy or something, not a care in the world, didn't think nothing about it, you know, wasn't upset, didn't even realize what happened. And y'all, I'm just gonna say, if that ain't a Gen X story, y'all, I really don't know what is. So my point is, we were taught to be resilient, but the reality is that we need to ask for help. Because the longer that we hold on and the tighter grip that we have on something, the more likely we are to break the very thing that we cherish, that we don't want to lose. And it kind of reminds me of a song. You don't know, some of you older folks, Gen X folks, remember that song, hold on loosely but don't let go. You cling too tightly, you're going to lose control, right? We'll let that settle in for just a second. Sometimes the chaos is really the story that we tell ourselves about what it means when we let go. We focus on what we'll lose instead of what we'll gain. Letting go is never about losing. Like I said earlier, it's about what we gain. We're not losing anything, we're choosing. It's about what gets to stay after we spring clean. This is an act of emotional housekeeping. And we have to ask ourselves questions. Does this still support who I'm becoming? Does this drain me or energize me? And you can make a list of like pros and cons of these kinds of things. Does it make me feel smaller? Because we talk about shrinking. We don't shrink ourselves. We don't do that for anybody. We're going to be authentic. Is this something that brings me joy? Or is this something that serves as a source of anxiety for me? We have to protect our energy, folks. It's very important. Because like I've said, like a broken record many, many times, you can't give what you don't have. You can only give and give and give so much. Eventually the tank's going to be empty. Eventually the charge is going to run out and we got to recharge, folks. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to get us another sip and we're going to get a little frosty.
Enjoy conversation with the peach. She's just a little frosty.